In today's episode with Dan Gerhold, we are breaking down the cattle markets, what is going on in the world of commodities, live cattle, everything else in between. Dan is breaking that down for all of us today. And we specifically spend a lot of time on the feeder market this week as well, touching on what is going on there, the feeder market just pushing the rest of the markets, and how that's looking over the past few months and what we anticipate that to look like going into the rest of fall and even into January as well. After that, we also hit on the corn markets. What is happening now that farmers are actually getting in the field and seeing what the crop product is actually coming out to be and what our yields are for this year and how it is affecting our global markets as well. We touch on all of those things today in this podcast. Before we jump in, if you guys could take a second to like, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, we would really appreciate it here at the team. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this podcast episode with Dan. Dan, welcome back to the podcast. How is life in Iowa? How's harvest going? Are you surviving up there right now?
Yeah, it's going. It's a busy time of year, as you can imagine. Yeah, the weather's cooling down, getting a little bit of that October drizzle. So the calf season is definitely taking full effect. Yeah, harvest is busy. A lot of beans got wrapped up last week, and pretty heavy in the corn right now. You look forward to it every year to see what's out in the field, and then you get about a third of the way in or halfway into harvest, and you're like, when will it end? Yeah. So no, it's that time of year. Everybody's tied up, busy, busy, busy. So life is good though. Life is good.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's great to hear. Well, how are the markets doing this week? We've had a little bit of change since we talked last week. So break it all down for us. What's going on?
Yeah, ever since coming on here and telling you how nervous and bearish I was, because all the indicators were pointing possibly lower, the market's done nothing but go up. So the last thing I want to do is switch and tell you I'm bullish and make the market go down. So I think we'll just hold off on that. Yeah, just remain a little bit nervous. This has been quite the rally. We put more than $20 on feeders in the last week. 10 days, 10 trading days, we've gone more than $20. So been pretty impressive. Now you got the feeder cattle index jumping. Southern sales were really, really strong early this week. And now you're up into the northern sales to finish off the week, and prices are extremely strong. I mean, 4 or 5 weight calves, unbelievable, knocking on, $2,700 a head. It's just, it's incredible what these markets have done. Cattle, long story short, cash bids jumped last week out of nowhere. Really did not see that coming. Not a lot of people did that I know of, but I think what it came down to is the board moved and put the cattle feeder in a negative basis scenario, and they just flat out told the packer, so you improve the bids, we're not selling them. So I was surprised I didn't see any deliveries last week, but we did get some tendered down in Texas yesterday. So that should, historically, you would have the longs running for the fence, scared, when they're getting those deliveries tendered. So we'll see how today acts. Overall, they're still expecting cash higher this week. With what the board's done, I don't disagree with anybody thinking that. I mean, we should be able to put a couple bucks on, even amidst kill cuts, even amidst, flat boxes not moving higher. It's one of those deals, Lauren, where it used to, my old rule of thumb was if the beef was higher and the sale barn cash was higher and the board was higher, if you get all three of those B's, we could expect one heck of a rally in the country cash cattle market. I'm not getting all three B's, so I don't want to step out and tell you that you should lock the gates or anything. I think we should just kind of, given the negative basis, I think we should probably fight for some higher cash, but I don't know if I want to get necessarily wildly bullish at this point. So at the end of the day, though, feeders are the leaders, and feeders have been dragging us higher and higher and higher. So kind of incredible April live cattle futures. Like a lot of people were buying, cattle that broke even for that March, April time frame at 250. Here we are trading 250. So it'll be interesting how we go through the day today and see what kind of follow through we get. So
I think feeders being the driving push of the market this fall has been the trend for sure. It has been absolutely wild to watch how much feeders are affecting the entire market right now and how they're pushing, how they're doing everything that they're doing in the market. I mean, a lot of that is due to just demand for them right now. We don't have a ton of foreign product coming in from Mexico as far as feeders go. So the American like raised feeders are higher commodities. People want them. People are like, hey, we need to fill our lots. We need to fill our pastures. We need to. So they're pushing more. They're pushing for higher prices. They're finding them in different areas. Those southern guys are having to come north a little bit for them. And all of the things that go along with that. So it's been absolutely wild to see it, but it's definitely been the trend of this fall.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It was a couple months ago I started hearing rumblings that people were, pulling calves off cows early, selling them unweaned, not even cut bulls. We were moving cattle a lot sooner because people were nervous about missing out on the market. It obviously is coming around that is probably true because supplies are very, very tight right now at these sale barns. And typically the month of October is not a strong demand month, as far as feeder cattle. Just everybody's in the field. It's the calf season, so nobody wants to really take that risk. But this year it's different. It's just, I swear to God, it seems like people think we're going to run out of feeder cattle the way they're selling. So pretty incredible. Pretty happy for the cow-calf producer, for the backgrounder. They're making good money. It's good to see.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's one of those situations that for the longest time, years and years and years, it's always like, let the farmers get out of the field, let people catch up a little bit in the fall, then start selling them. And if you can wait, you're going to get a better price for them. This fall, it definitely hasn't been that. And it's just been really crazy to watch how the markets have been affected by that. I'm curious to see how the next few months are going to go with starting calf run and everything like that, what that's going to look like and kind of how that affects our numbers a little bit as well. I'm curious to see. We're obviously going to have a little bit of a drop in historic numbers because people have been selling a little bit earlier, but I'm curious to see what that is going to look like, if there's going to be a significant one, and just how that all kind of balances out for people as we go into the next few months.
Yeah, no, I agree. If the farmer was any kind of indicator on what cattle feeders prices are going to do, I think they're going to stay strong. I talked to a lot of farmers who want to walk their corn off the farm because it flat out doesn't work. 360, 380, 390 cash corn does not work. So what are they going to do? Try to add value with feeder cattle. So you get guys out of the combine here in the next month. I think there's going to be some more renewed interest in those feeders. That should be interesting. Depending on location, I know there's dry pockets in the south. There's a lot of feed that got put up this summer up north, and guys are willing to feed it this winter. So I think that demand for feeder cattle is going to remain strong all the way through December and into January. It's a pretty incredible market. It truly is. It had every opportunity to completely get wrecked, the week before last week and into last week, and did the complete opposite. Went screaming higher. So love to see it.
Yeah. Well, like you said last week when we were talking, all of the indicators were pointing that it was going to be bearish, like every single one of them. And that, I think, is the theme of this market as well, is the fact that like we think one thing is going to happen and then ass backwards is what actually happens. Like,
absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And honestly, Lauren, the indicators haven't changed a lot. Open interest is still dropping. I mean, yesterday was the first day we saw live cattle open interest go up. And the fact that it was going lower in that entire rally, that's not a bullish market. Yesterday, all of a sudden, open interest going up. It could have been a little bit of spreading off, could have been a little bit of buying in the front, people re-owning cattle if they sold, last week thinking, hey, this thing seems like it's going higher yet. Let's buy some of these front months. Feeder cattle did the opposite. Feeder cattle open interest was going up last week, and now all of a sudden feeder cattle open interest yesterday went down a few contracts. So I don't know. The market's arguing with itself. We don't need to step in the middle of the fight, but at the end of the day, it's going higher. The trend is your friend, and the trend is still higher. You broke out. It certainly seems like it'd be easy to touch 385 feeders today, and there's a lot of talk. Maybe we go touch that 400 here pretty quick. I wouldn't doubt it. Some of these feeders are high enough that we could start pushing that index on 380, 385, 390, and all of a sudden the board wouldn't be too out of line, screaming up to that 400. Pretty crazy stuff, honestly. It's just, yeah, pretty fun, pretty exciting for most of cattle country, but pretty crazy.
You touched on earlier how a lot of farmers are wanting to walk their corn off instead of drive it off this year. Can you touch on what we're seeing there and then what we're seeing just in crop markets right now as well?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, the big issue making that happen is capital. The fact that we've got guys that haven't fed cattle in years, and all of a sudden, they've got an empty concrete slab, and they're like, hey, let's add some value through cattle. Let's get some manure back. All of a sudden they're going to their banker, and their banker's like, wait a minute, now's not necessarily the time to be jumping at the cattle market. But it's interesting. Capital is an issue right now. Even for the guys that have stayed in and fed through all of this, capital's still an issue. If they're straight cash to cash, buying feeders, selling fats, buying the feeders right back, no problem. The guys that have been hedging, they are screaming up and down about these margin calls and everything that goes with it, because they're paying hedge line of credits. They've got interest against that, and now the basis is flipped. So it's not the easiest situation in the cattle market right now, just because the market's going higher. It's also making this market somewhat of a struggle for some producers, farmers included. If they want to go out and buy a potload of feeder cattle, it's $250,000. So say you make just 100,000 or a couple 100,000 bushels of corn, that takes a lot of capital to fill that yard and burn through all that corn. So it's going to be an interesting year, but nonetheless, you're still going to have some farmer interest once we get these combines, wrapped up for the year, put away. I think you still bring the farmer in here, and they decide, let's feed some cattle. So we should have that interest coming here. The way harvest has gone up here in my neck of the woods, I wouldn't be surprised. Most guys are wrapped up by the first week, of November, possibly. It might drag into the second week, but you get those guys wrapped up, cleaned up. That demand here in December and January is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. Great to hear. Any other things that we missed or that we need to touch on today in the markets? We kind of hit all areas that are at least worthy of talking about right now for the most part.
I guess I'd probably touch on corn a little bit. There's been a lot of questions from people outside of the Corn Belt. What's this corn crop? What's the price going to do? When we look at the corn crop compared to last year, it's pretty discouraging to see us 50, 60, some cases 100 bushels back. As a whole, I would say 40, 50 bushel back, especially here in the state of Iowa. Illinois is similar. They don't have a record crop. It's discouraging to see that. There's pockets where the crop is better than last year just because, they were too wet last year. Southern Illinois or southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, northwest Iowa. Well, they were super, super wet last year, so they had a better year this year on the corn crop. But other than that, the corn's been kind of disappointing because last year was such a phenomenal year. Fast forward, what's that going to do to prices? Well, you got a double-edged sword. You got a farmer that's bleeding right now, losing, 100, 200 bucks an acre right now. Corn, soybeans, both. It's just not a good situation. So they're going to need capital to finish up this year's rents here towards the end of the year. They're also going to need capital to start out next year. You also have the bankers breathing down their necks. Hey, what are we going to do about going backwards like we have? If the government passes out some money when they reopen, let's say, that'd be great, but that's going to give the farmer a little bit of staying power to hold out, possibly wait for a higher market. Does that eventually turn into that higher market? I don't know. Some years it does, some years it doesn't. But inevitably, when I look at what we have on the books for export sales, we have some really strong sales on the books. We've got some of those shipments taking place, so that's strong. I'm happy to see that. All of a sudden, now you have a shorter crop. Okay, so the feed and residual number always needed to come down just because there's less hogs and cattle on feed. But now all of a sudden, you have a shorter crop compared to last year. And hey, do we have the potential to rally this corn? Are we going back to $5 corn? I personally don't believe so. Do we have the chance to run to 440, 450? Absolutely, in my opinion. At the same time, the market really had a shockwave last Friday. I think every market had a shockwave last Friday with Trump coming out and saying, screw China, basically, is what he said. That hit all the markets pretty hard except for cattle. So if we don't sit down at the table and talk with China, these markets might just trade sideways until they wake up and realize we don't need China. Soybeans, there's a lot of sales on the books to other countries. We don't historically sell a pile of corn to China. We just need to get these sales shipped. So personally, I'm a buyer of corn here. I'm not going to throw all my eggs in one basket and buy all the corn day one, but you got corn down here at 410. Beef corn, I'd probably step out, maybe own a little bit of the March, a little bit of the May, and then if we do trickle lower, I'd probably add to that position, bring your average down, and hopefully we get that run this winter up to that 440, 450.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's crazy how the corn market has been the past few months. And we've been talking about this potential possibility for a little bit now. When we were talking a couple months ago, everyone was like, driving by the fields, things look good. Get in the fields. People aren't so hopeful as far as yields go and everything like that. So it's interesting to see how things have been affected as our farmers have been starting to actually get in the field, see what our yields actually are coming out to be this year, and how that all is affecting our markets and our global just reach with our corn product as well. So definitely something to keep our eyes on as we go into the next few months and finish up harvest and see where we kind of land as far as all of that goes. Any other things that we need to head on today, Dan?
It's up to me, for me.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. As always, to all of our listeners out there, thank you for watching another episode of the CattleUSA Daily Podcast. We will see you all tomorrow on another episode. Have a good one, y'all.